Akbar, in full Abu al-Fath Jalal al-Din Muhammad Akbar, born October 15, 1542, Umarkot, now in Sindh Province, Pakistan, died circa October 25, 1605, Agra, India, the greatest of the Mughal emperors of India. He reigned from 1556 to 1605 and extended Mughal power over most of the Indian subcontinent. In order to preserve the unity of his empire, Akbar adopted programs that won the loyalty of the non-Muslim populations of his realm. He reformed and strengthened his central administration and also centralized his financial system. Organized tax collection processes. Although he never renounced Islam, he took an active interest in other religions, persuading Hindus, Parsis, and Christians, as well as Muslims, to engage in religious discussion before him. Illiterate himself, he encouraged scholars, poets, painters, and musicians, making his court a center of culture. Abu al-Fath Jalal al-Din Muhammad Akbar was descended from Turks, Mongols, and Iranians, the three peoples who predominated in the political elites of northern India in medieval times. Among his ancestors were Timur, Tamerlane, and Genghis Khan. His father, Humayun, driven from his capital of Delhi by the Afghan usurper Sher Shah of Sur, was vainly trying to establish his authority in the Sindh region, now Sindh Province, Pakistan. Soon, Humayun had to leave India for Afghanistan and Iran, where the Shah lent him some troops. Humayun regained his throne in 1555, 10 years after Sher Shah's death. Akbar, at the age of 13, was made governor of the Punjab region, now largely occupied by Punjab State, India, and Punjab Province, Pakistan. Humayun had barely established his authority when he died in 1556. Within a few months, his governors lost several important places, including Delhi itself, to Hemu, a Hindu minister who claimed the throne for himself. But on November 5, 1556, a Mughal force defeated Hemu. At the Second Battle of Panipat, near present-day Panipat, Haryana state, India, which commanded the route to Delhi, thus ensuring Akbar's succession. At Akbar's accession his rule extended over little more than the Punjab and the area around Delhi, but, under the guidance of his chief minister, Bairam Khan, his authority was gradually consolidated and extended. The process continued. After Akbar forced Bairam Khan to retire in 1560 and began to govern on his own, at first still under household influences but soon as an absolute monarch. Akbar first attacked Malwa, a state of strategic and economic importance commanding the route through the Vindhya range to the plateau region of the Deccan, peninsular India, and containing rich agricultural land. It fell to him in 1561. Toward the zealously independent Hindu Rajputs, warrior ruling class, inhabiting the rugged, hilly Rajputana region, Akbar adopted a policy of conciliation and conquest. Successive Muslim rulers had found the Rajputs dangerous, however weakened by disunity. But in 1562, when Raja Bihari Mal of Amber, now Jaipur, threatened by a succession dispute, offered Akbar his daughter in marriage, Akbar accepted the offer. The Raja acknowledged Akbar's suzerainty, and his sons prospered in Akbar's service. Akbar followed the same feudal policy toward the other Rajput chiefs. They were allowed to hold their ancestral territories, provided that they acknowledged Akbar as emperor, paid tribute, supplied troops when required, and concluded a marriage alliance with him. The emperor's service was also open to them and their sons, which offered financial rewards as well as honor. However, Akbar showed no mercy to those who refused to acknowledge his supremacy. When, After protracted fighting in Mewar, Akbar captured the historic fortress of Chittor, now Chittorgarh, in 1568. He massacred its inhabitants. Even though Mewar did not submit, the fall of Chittor prompted other Rajput Rajas to accept Akbar as emperor in 1570 and to conclude marriage alliances with him, although the state of Marwar held out until 1583. One of the notable features of Akbar's government was the extent of Hindu, and particularly Rajput, participation. Rajput princes attained the highest ranks, as generals and as provincial governors, in the Mughal service. Discrimination against non-Muslims was reduced by abolishing the taxation of pilgrims and the tax payable by non-Muslims in lieu of military service. Yet Akbar was far more successful than any previous Muslim ruler in winning the cooperation of Hindus at all levels in his administration. The further expansion of his territories gave them fresh opportunities. In 1573 Akbar conquered Gujarat, an area with many ports that dominated India's trade with Western Asia, and then turned east toward Bengal. A rich country with a distinctive culture, Bengal was difficult to rule from Delhi because of its network of rivers, always a ptto flood during the summer monsoon. Its Afghan ruler, declining to follow his father's example and acknowledge Mughal suzerainty, was forced to submit in 1575. When he rebelled and was defeated and killed in 1576, Akbar annexed Bengal. Toward the end of his reign, Akbar embarked on a fresh round of conquests. The Kashmir region was subjugated in 1586, Sindh in 1591, and Kandahar, Afghanistan, in 1595. Mughal troops now moved south of the Vindhya range into the Deccan. By 1601 Khandesh, Berar, and part of Ahmadnagar had been added to Akbar's empire. His last years were troubled by the rebellious behavior of his son, Prince Salim, later the Emperor Jahangir, who was eager for power. Previous Indian governments had been weakened by two disintegrating tendencies characteristic of pre-modern states, one of armies being split up into the private forces of individual commanders and the other of provincial governors becoming hereditary local rulers. Akbar combated those trends by instituting comprehensive reforms that involved two fundamental changes. First, every officer was, at least in principle, appointed and promoted by the emperor instead of by his immediate superior. Second, the traditional distinction between the nobility of the sword and that of the pen was abolished. Civil administrators were assigned military ranks, thus becoming as dependent on the emperor as army officers. Those ranks were systematically graded from commanders of 10 persons to commanders of 5,000 persons, higher ranks being allotted to Mughal princes. Officers were paid either in cash from the emperor's treasury or, more frequently, by the assignment of lands from which they had to collect the revenue, retaining the amount of their salary and remitting the balance to the treasury. Such lands seem to have been transferred frequently from one officer to another, that increased the office's dependence on the emperor, but it may also have encouraged them to squeeze as much as they could from the peasants with whom their connection might be transitory. Politically, the greatest merit of the system was that it enabled the emperor to offer attractive careers to the able, ambitious, and influential. In that way, Akbar was able to enlist the loyal services of many Rajput princes. Akbar's reforms required a centralized financial system, and thus, by the side of each provincial governor, Subadar, later called Nawab, was placed a civil administrator, Diwan, or Divan, who supervised revenue collection, prepared accounts, and reported directly to the emperor. As a further safeguard against abuses, Akbar reorganized the existing network of newswriters, whose duty it was to send regular reports of important events to the emperor. Akbar also seems to have instituted more efficient revenue assessment and collection in an effort to safeguard the peasants from excessive demands and the state from loss of money. But such efficiency could only have been enforced in the areas directly administered by the central government. That excluded the lands under tributary rulers such as the Rajputs and also the lands assigned for the maintenance of Mughal officers. Yet, notwithstanding Akbar's reforms, travelers' accounts indicate that the Indian peasants remained impoverished. The official elite, on the other hand, enjoyed great wealth. Liberal patronage was given to painters, poets, musicians, and scholars, and luxury industries flourished. Akbar also supported state workshops for the production of high-quality textiles and ornaments. Akbar maintained a luxurious and brilliant court, at which elaborate ceremonies emphasized his distance from other men, though he was careful to cultivate public opinion outside court circles. Every morning at dawn he stood at an open window to be seen and reverenced by the people. Foreign observers commented on the graceful manner in which he accepted little gifts from the people and showed himself ready to hear the complaint of any man who dared to approach him. Physically, he was strong and could withstand hardship on campaigns. Although he seems to have been no more than 5 feet 7 inches, 170 centimeters tall, he impressed observers as a dominating personality. Clearly, although he was illiterate, he had a powerful and original mind. His unprejudiced inquiries into Christian doctrines misled the Jesuit missionaries he invited to his court into thinking that he was on the point of conversion. He persuaded the Muslim theologians at his court to accept him as arbiter on points of Islamic law in dispute among them. Although that seems to have been little more than an expression of his systematic approach to problems, the Orthodox were offended. He gave further offense by the religious discussions he encouraged between Muslims, Hindus, Parsis, and Christians. Those discussions were continued by a small group of courtiers who shared with Akbar a taste for mysticism. Although their doctrines and ceremonies, known as the divine faith, Din-e-Ilahi, assigned a central place to Akbar himself, it would be an oversimplification to ascribe political motives to those developments. Begun in 1570 and abandoned in 1586, Akbar's capital of Fatehpur Sikri, near Delhi, is evidence of the resources he could command. Its combination of Hindu and Muslim architectural styles symbolizes the contact of cultures that he encouraged. Similarly, he commissioned the translation of Sanskrit classics into Persian and gave illustrated copies to his courtiers. He also received with enthusiasm the European pictures brought by the Jesuits, and his painters incorporated European techniques of realism and perspective into the distinctive Mughal painting style, characterized by a vivid treatment of the physical world, that began to develop during his reign. Akbar's reign was an example of the stimulating effects of cultural encounter. It has also often been portrayed as a model for future governments, strong, benevolent, tolerant, and enlightened. Effective government in a country as geographically vast and as socially complex as India demands a wide measure of social support. Akbar understood that need and satisfied it.